My name's Orla Shortall. The Scottish Government say they want to halt biodiversity loss, address health inequalities and ensure a planning system contributes to an inclusive, just and sustainable wellbeing society. In England, Labour have announced an immediate blitz of planning reform if they get in. But here in Aberdeen, we've evidence that the decision to open up the Greenbelt in Torry for industrialisation was made long before the community was given any opportunity to influence plans that would impact their environment. How would the candidates work to make the planning system genuinely responsive to local needs and preferences, rather than just doing what developers want?
Thank you. You can go first. I'm going to go to Kirsty first.
Yeah, just to begin on that, planning policies devolved. So it's the Scottish Government that would be making decisions over planning policy for Scotland. It wouldn't be us if we were elected to Westminster. We wouldn't have a say over how the planning system is regulated in Scotland, because it's the Scottish Parliament that makes decisions on that. But you know, just in terms of some of the background, you're right. There was an issue. There was a significant issue that happened in March 2020 when the local development plan went through, and at the last moment, at the 11th hour, an amendment was added to change St Fittick's Park and Dooney's Farm from Greenbelt into Opportunity Land. My party opposed that and dissented from the vote because we disagreed with it so strongly. But I have spoken to quite a lot of people in relation to planning policy and said that this really, really highlights that the local development plan phase, the time that is being discussed, is the time that community engagement needs to happen, is the time that people need to get in there, because once the local development plan has been agreed, you've got a problem that when that you can't refuse stuff if it fits in with the local development plan, or you can if there's other bases on which to refuse it, but it's much more difficult to do so. So because the local development plan has already said that's opportunity land, it can be used for it's industrial land, it's not Greenbelt anymore. So I've spoken to a lot of people who've come to me with concerns about planning and said to them, when the next local development plan is happening, you need to get in there and make your views heard at that point. That is the point that you need to be saying, no, this land should stay Greenbelt, because that's the moment where where the kind of areas are set for what can happen in each of the areas. I think we need to do probably a better job at consultation on this. I understand that council might be discussing that fairly soon in Aberdeen about basically saying the next stage of the next new local development plan needs to happen, and therefore the community needs to be consulted on it. And I've spoken to councillors on that and said that what I would like to see is that as many community groups as possible are consulted on it. So community councils are statutory consultees. They're required to be consulted in a number of different planning applications or planning issues. But I've said to talk to other groups. So in my area, I'm talking about things like Fair Sands project. They're not community council. They're a really important group in the area. Same for Printfield. Same for Shmoo, for example, who do a lot of good work in the area. Making sure they're all consulted, they all have a say, and then those views go to the council before they make decisions on the local development plan. And just very lastly, sorry, I knew that was quite long. Part of our manifesto also talks about community benefit. And says that actually, given the legislation that we have and given the devolved powers that the Scottish Parliament has, we don't have enough flexibility over ensuring that there's community benefit. We can only use the planning system, and we're kind of constrained with what we can use in that. Actually, there's more levers that are held at Westminster that should be devolved in order that we can ensure that there's more community benefit from anything that happens, whether that's a wind turbine going up or whether that's a housing development that's taking place.
Thank you. Guy, do you want to?
Yeah, planning law in this country is a bit of a mess, to be honest. It's riddled with contradictions. And when the planning bill came to the Scottish Parliament, there was a bit of a deal brokered between the SNP and the Tories, and that is what we've got now. We've got the planning law that they brokered within the Scottish Parliament. And again, like I said, riddled with contradictions. Consultations are essentially a tick box exercise at this point. They're a joke, and most people aren't engaged with them because they know their views can be completely dismissed. It's essentially a part of the process that you have to do, and then you can just ignore it. The other thing is as well, there's this idea that planning is quasi-judicial, which means that the councillors sitting on on that, making that decision, they're doing an impartial thing for you and for the community, when we all know that that's not the case. A lot of planning applications are deeply political, and we need to remove the ambiguity around that. The other thing I would like to say is developers have various avenues of appeal, numerous different ways that they can appeal, and they have the money to do it as well. One of the things the Scotch Greens have been adamant about doing is introducing a third-party right of appeal so that communities can also appeal decisions. Now, that might take longer, but there might be other ways to stream the planning decisions that we make. But some planning decisions should take a long time. When you're looking at certain areas like a habitat, woodland, it takes time to assess them. So that's the kind of the reforms that we need to look at when we're looking at planning law. But we also need to really revisit the Planning Act in the first place and start from scratch in very many ways. That's what I would be doing.
Thanks.
Thank you, Guy. I actually find myself curiously agreeing with both parties here. Planning law is archaic and it needs to change, and the Labour Party is committed to change that. By the way, you've made a manifesto commitment to that. But I've been on planning, and it's one of the few committees that it's a quasi-judicial committee. That means it makes a decision that is legally binding. The problem is it's probably one of the committees I go to where you come out of it making the best decision you can with both groups of people equally hating you. So it's not working. It's not working for us. The politicians who are trying to make an honest decision in I would say most cases. I appreciate what Guy says, that there are influences, and sometimes there are. It's not working for the communities, and it's not even working for the developers. I think part of the challenge is that the developers are very incentivised by money, obviously, because they're profit-making companies, and the council, as Kirsty mentioned earlier, it is really the local plan that you must engage with early to have a proper say. I think what happened about St Fittick's was wrong. I think we in the Labour group have consistently supported St Fittick's since we've
Other
been...
than in 2020 when
Yeah.
you moved.
Listen. You do things with the best knowledge you have at the time, and then when you understand what the impacts are, you reassess what your position is, and we better understand the impacts of the community now. We continue to support that we do need to have a net zero organisation here, but at the same time we must engage with and have meaningful consultation with communities where they're actually having a genuine input to the solution and not have a tick box exercise. And that's what I think the Labour Party will offer you if you vote for us.
Thank you.